Oh, let's see what we got going on. Checking out my Facebook page and welcoming everybody in. We are just getting started tonight. We are going live with Healthy Together and Feeling Great. Hope y'all are doing great. I'm not sure. I don't see anything on my Facebook. Oh, there we go. Looks like we're going live. There we are. How about that? Now we're going live. All right. Well, welcome in, folks, to Healthy Together and Feeling Great and our science call tonight. It's great to have you in there. If you're coming in tonight and maybe you find that there's somebody that you'd like to invite, definitely type their name, just like at and their name down at the bottom. And you can welcome them into tonight. Let them know what's going on. I'm inviting anybody to do that. I'm Coach Ken. Most of y'all have known me as Pastor Ken for a number of years, and I'm still a pastor, but I'm also a coach for nutrition. And so tonight we're going to be talking about metabolic health. And I want to introduce those that are conspiring with me on this journey on our team. Dr. Lauren Gagliano, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself tonight? We're glad to have you here.
Sure, Ken. Thanks a lot. I have been a dentist for 30 years, practicing in Anchorage, Alaska, and I'm excited to share with you about metabolic health and dentistry and what I saw in the dental chair that has been happening with patients.
Awesome. Charlene Hampton is our pharmacist with us tonight. Welcome in. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Coach Ken. My name is Charlene, and I am a pharmacist here in Anchorage, Alaska, where I've lived for about 30 years. I've been a pharmacist for about over 30 years.
You're not that old.
In the community. In this community of Anchorage. So, yes, I am excited to be here to share and join the discussion tonight.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad to have all three of us on here. And those of us saw the other night, we were playing with some different things and trying to figure things out about what we were going to be doing. And so I hope tonight we've got our system kind of figured out a little bit better. And so we're going to dive into this tonight and talk a little bit about metabolic health. So those of y'all that are coming in, again, we welcome you. And if you've got anybody that you'd like to invite, just type their name, and in the comment section there on Facebook, just type the @ symbol and let people know that you're live. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do that now myself. So it's not really hard to do. You can even do it to like everybody you know and just hit like something like @ followers or @ friends. I don't know if mine's going to send out. Let me see if I can shoot one.
You might be able to do it at everyone.
I think I just got one. I got an @ highlight. There we go. So that's how we do it, letting people know. So folks, as y'all are coming in, you may have heard us talk about this before, but here's the thing. 93% of us Americans are not metabolically healthy. We are not. We are sick. And ultimately what that translates to is as you're driving down the road tonight, maybe you've been commuted in the morning on your way to work, you're going to pass at least 10 cars. And those 10 cars, every time you pass 10 cars, think about this. 9 of those people that are driving those are people that are sick. And maybe one of those people is actually you. And I suspect that's the case. But here's the thing. Being metabolically healthy is something that we don't hear a lot about. Dr. G, would you kind of delve into that a little bit more? What is metabolic? What does it mean to be metabolically unhealthy? What is metabolic syndrome? I've heard about that.
Sure. Go ahead and advance that next slide, Ken.
Oh, I'm trying to. There we go.
So metabolic syndrome is characterized by these 5 signs. And if any 3 or more of these signs are out of range, then you are metabolically unhealthy or you have metabolic syndrome. So what does that look like? So if your HDL cholesterol is low, it's less than 40 in men or less than 50 in women. You have a high fasting blood sugar. That means it's over 100 when you have your blood sugar tested. Your waist circumference is larger than half your height. And what that means in men, it's greater than 40. inches, and in women, it's greater than 35 inches. Your triglycerides, when you have your lipid panel, if they are greater than 150, and then of course, if you have high blood pressure, it's over over 130 over 85, then you are metabolically sick. So with the next slide, what does all that mean? Is there a delay? There we
There
go.
we go.
We'll get it. So how does this affect you? What does all that mean? So over time, what can happen is your vision can become blurred. You may have trouble focusing. You have an increased, of thirst. You just can't seem to get enough water. There's skin lesions that form in the form of dark patches that cannot be rubbed off. It's called acanthosis nigricans. You may develop skin tags or even psoriasis or eczema. You're always tired, can't seem to get enough energy. You have tingling in your hands and feet, along with chronic pain. Just everything hurts randomly for no reason. You have an increased hunger along with that increased thirst, where you are always craving something, salty or sugar or something. And of course, you have high blood sugar. So that's how those signs can turn into these symptoms.
Right. And, ultimately, when we think about this and we look at it, there's even more that involved in this. And the typical pathophysiology today, when it comes to treating things, is to treat each and every one of these individually. So we treat for high blood pressure, we treat for obesity, we treat for heart disease, we treat for erectile dysfunction, we treat for migraines. And Charlene, that's kind of your area in part, because as a pharmacist, you see all of that treatment and all of those medications come your way, and you're the one that has to dispense all those. What is it that you've been seeing when it comes to these conditions right here?
Absolutely. What I see on average, each patient is on anywhere from 5 to 10 medications. That's
Holy cow.
Yeah. And those medications, really, all of them can be directed to each one of these branches. If we think of it like branches of a tree, all these type 2 diabetes, stroke, obesity, like you mentioned before, each of them are treated separately with their own set of medications. And so, yes.
Right. So it's kind of like, the way I like to think about it is it's kind of like being a kid, and in the summertime that we're playing around, we're goofing around. It's at the end of the day, and mom calls your name and says, "Lauren, Charlene, it's time to come in," right? And at that point it's not really serious, but dinner's around the corner, but you keep playing a little bit, and that's kind of like, hey, maybe you get those skin tags, maybe you get in that fatigue at the end of the day, you're tired, you're worn out, but then about 15-20 minutes later, mom calls your name again and says, Sally, Jane, Tom, time to come in. Well, now you're getting those diagnoses of things that are a little bit more, they hurt a little bit. Maybe you're dealing with migraines or acid reflux, or you're starting to have that joint pain. And then it comes back around again, and you get to hear your full name called, Kenneth Lee Hagler, get in the house. And then you're really in trouble. And at that point in time, you're dealing with things like type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure and those kind of things. And ultimately, what these are known as is ultimately what's been called the plagues of prosperity. And if I can get my computer to cooperate, we'll move that forward. There we go. And so what we've been treating is treating every one of these individually, but there's a whole nother set of thoughts within the medical community that there is maybe a root cause for these things. And that has been talked about, and it's been researched, but it's not been getting the addressing of the issue the way that it should, even though this being addressed for actually centuries. But in 1975, Dr. Joseph Kraft, who was the chair of the Department of Clinical Pathology and Nuclear Medicine at St. Joseph's Hospital up in Chicago, was the first one that came up. He came up with the Kraft test, because what he saw was a connection between those that have diabetes and those that have heart disease. And he said, ultimately, if you've got heart disease and you've not been diagnosed with diabetes, you simply haven't been diagnosed yet. Now, today, in our day, Dr. Benjamin Bickman has picked up that research while Dr. Kraft isn't with us. Dr. Ben Bickman is chair of cell biology and physiology at Brigham Young University, and he is traveling around, and it really is the leading metabolic scientist of our day. And the research has led him to writing the book, Why We Get Sick, and addressing what both of them believed ultimately to be the root cause, which is something that is known as insulin resistance, that ultimately insulin and our body's resistance to the insulin that our body's making in response to our metabolic lifestyle and how we're living is the thing that's making all of the difference in the world. Now, there's a little bit more to it than that. And Dr. G, can you talk a little bit more about this?
Sure, of course. So normally when we eat food, it is turned to simple sugars in our body. And what happens then, the pancreas releases insulin, and insulin then is the key that opens the receptor site on the cell to allow glucose to be utilized by the cells for energy. Every cell in our body has this, and so that's how we use glucose for fuel. Now, that's in a normal situation. With insulin resistance, what happens is when insulin is released by the pancreas, the key can no longer open the receptor site, the lock, to allow glucose to come in the cell because the cell is full. The insulin's working just fine. It's just the
Right.
receptor will not respond to it because it's full. It says, no more, I don't want any more. So then insulin still has a job to do. So what it does is it carries that glucose and into your bloodstream, and then it deposits it in your body, first as fat in your blood, and then through the other organs, because it has to put it somewhere. And that's how you become insulin resistant.
Now, it's not just looking at that, though. There's actually a way we can figure this out, right?
Yes. So there's a couple of ways, and we'll talk about, well, there's more than a couple. There's several ways, but we're going to talk about two. One is simply asking your doctor or your primary care provider for a fasting insulin test, different than a fasting glucose test. We'll get into that later. The other thing is when you have your lipid panel done, what you can do is take your triglycerides and divide them by your HDL-C, the good cholesterol. If it's less than 2, then you're insulin sensitive. That's good. 1 is even better. If you're greater than 2, then you are more than likely insulin resistant, and you're seeing things like skin tags, and you may have migraines. You also may have some acne, things like that. Your hair may be falling out. It may be thinning. If you are 3, if your score is 3 or more, then you are highly insulin resistant. You more than likely are heading toward, if not already, with the plagues of prosperity.
Right. So this is really kind of expanding on those symptoms of metabolic syndrome, because these are really tied together. If you have metabolic syndrome, you've got insulin resistance. If you've got insulin resistance, you've got metabolic syndrome, ultimately is what we're talking about.
Yep.
You're going to have signs, but you're also going to have blood work that is going to share this a little bit. Now, we're talking about our blood work. Now, Dr. G, you talked about glucose, and let's talk about, you guys, may have a different perspective on this, because as medical professionals, y'all have seen different things about this. And this slide, can y'all unpack this for us a little bit about what's going on with insulin?
Sure.
Ken, I'll start with
let's do that together.
I'll start with glucose. In this, think of it as a timeline is really what it is. So we start out with normal production of insulin that's produced by the pancreas. When you eat carbohydrate or have a sugar load, ingest that. And, insulin does its thing and it's able to bring the glucose down. But then what happens over time as you approach this 10 to 15 mark, those 10 to 15 years, what's happening is the glucose, it looks like it is low, which it is, but there's some other things going on. So it's kind of a silence phase. There's other things going on behind the scenes. So your hemoglobin, during this time, your hemoglobin A1C may look normal, may look great. There's things brewing and you just don't see it yet. So in this phase, maybe your blood pressure is going up, maybe your weight is increasing, you have increased fatigue, your cholesterol is going up, but there's no signs or symptoms for you to know that there's a problem.
Exactly. You described that perfectly. Basically, insulin's behind the scenes and it's keeping things where it's supposed to be. It's keeping your A1C in check. It's keeping that glucose level in check. But then around the 10 or 15, even 20-year mark of this going on, insulin and glucose kind of come together to where one is, there's a lot of insulin being produced, hyperinsulinemia, and there's all of a sudden now the glucose starts rising, you have hypoglycemia. And then by that time, after all these years, you're finally diagnosed with one or more of the plagues of prosperity.
Right. So we're talking about this now. A lot of times we think about insulin as it's always related to diabetes, and we have to get extra ones. So it kind of comes across in the area of medication, which I'm kind of curious then, Charlene, as a pharmacist, is there a relationship between our medications and insulin resistance?
Great question, Ken. Let's take a deep dive in and take a look. So here listed are 5 different drug classes, the most common drug classes linked to insulin resistance. If you were to do a study into the top, 25 drugs that are prescribed, you'll find these drug classes in that group. The first one, corticosteroids, it's a fancy name for steroids, and those are usually prescribed in acute situations, so for emergency situations to bring down inflammation. Dr. G, you've probably used it quite a bit if you're doing a root canal or anything that's really going to swell up the face. You may prescribe a steroid for them in addition to other medications. What the steroids, how that class of drug is linked to insulin resistance is that steroids help to promote the production of glucose in the liver. So it actually increases the glucose, which would then cause more insulin to be prompted to be made. So I think we can see how that would contribute to insulin resistance. The beta blockers and thiazide diuretics are both 2 drug classes used to treat heart conditions. And heart disease is the #1 killer right now. So you can see the connection there where the beta blockers, they decrease the insulin, they disrupt the uptake of glucose into the muscle. Thiazide diuretics do similar, but they also deplete us of potassium. And then statins we'll look at closer, but they impair metabolism. And then antidepressants have a long time history of causing weight gain.
So you were talking about statins. So this is an important thing, I think, to bring up. You were talking about that heart disease is the #1 thing that unalives us. I think we're supposed to use our correct language for that. But this is huge because this increased statins have risen from 149% from 2012, 2013 to now. It was 37 million, now 92 million people in 2018 and 2019. There's a particular reason for that. I think Dr. G, you had found this one related to statins.
I did because the guidelines changed back in probably 2012, 2013. Was it then? I think that's what it was. So, and what I saw, that was very reflective of what I saw in my dental office. I started noticing that there were more people coming in and they were on statin medication. But more importantly, the more people that came in, it was a younger generation. And I believe this study, it says that those treated under the age or between the age of 40 and 75 years of age with an LDL cholesterol from 70 to 189 and without diabetes and without a cardiovascular risk should be treated with a moderate to a high intensity statin. Now,
is that what you saw, Charlene, too? I mean, you've seen it. I would suspect you saw a huge increase.
Oh, yeah. Statins today are the #1 prescribed medication in the U.S.
So tell us a little bit about that, because that's next up here we wanted to talk about.
So statins contribute to insulin resistance and weight gain. Basically, the big thing here is by interrupting it interrupts the mitochondria, which is our big powerhouse energy producer in our cell. So this is something at a cellular level. So you can imagine when Dr. G was talking about the lock and key at the cell wall there, insulin being trying to unlock the door for glucose to go in. So any disruption with that signaling will cause insulin and glucose to remain in the bloodstream. So it disrupts the insulin signaling. You can imagine because of that, the glucose increases in the bloodstream. It stays in the bloodstream. We get hormone disruption, and muscle pain is a big one also that can happen. It directly increases your hemoglobin A1C. So that sets you up right there for the plagues of prosperity.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So there's more to it than that, though. So there's another medication that we see a lot of.
Yes, metformin. Metformin is also very commonly prescribed. It's commonly prescribed for pre-diabetics, and also when you have type 2 diabetes. It's also earlier on, it was used for PCOS. And it does a good job in the beginning lowering blood glucose. It can also help you lose weight. But over time, we see that that's not continued. It also has some mitochondria suppression. It interrupts your thyroid hormones. And you can imagine between those two being disrupted, you have a decrease of energy, decrease of metabolism. Kind of your metabolism becomes sluggish. Your cravings increase. It disrupts your gut microbiome. What I mean by that is just the complex bacteria, trillions of bacteria in our stomach. When that happens, you disrupt other hormones such as serotonin. It depletes vital nutrients like B12 and folate. And you can see now a little bit of a cycle starting.
Right. And there's still more. It's crazy.
Yes. The famous pens that are available now. They're all the rage.
Yeah.
And, these have their own set of problems as we've listed here. And, GLP is something we produce in our body naturally. And so when you try to supplement it with something that's not real, that's made, you can imagine how it's a foreigner in our body. Although it's made to mimic, it's not done exactly like producing our own.
Right. Exactly. So now, Dr. G, you saw this kind of journey taking place, right? You saw different things happen in your chair, as a dentist. You were kind of looking at things. Oh, sorry. Nope. Charlene, this is still you, I think.
Yeah.
This is just a great schematic of basically what we're talking about, where you have a symptom, right? Whether it's migraines or headaches or weight gain, fatigue, and you seek help for that. And you're given a remedy in the form of a pill. And that pill has side effects. And then those side effects display as more symptoms. So then we get more pills.
Right. Now this is where
and
this is where Dr. G has been looking at this. Right. So Dr. G, talk a little bit about what you saw here. That when this played out, it played out in a very particular way. At least from what you saw.
There are
maybe
yes. And this particular pharma loop, I'm going to start with when you were diagnosed with high cholesterol and they put you on a statin, because statin is the most common med that is prescribed today. And there's tons of, there's other pharma loops. Charlene just described one perfectly, like if you have a migraine or if you start out with being fatigued. So let's just start out with you are diagnosed with high cholesterol and you're put on atorvastatin or Lipitor. And this is what I saw as patients would come into the office. And that would be one medication. And then I'd see them again. And all of a sudden, because if you remember, atorvastatin also causes insulin resistance, they are diagnosed as a pre-diabetic. So they're put on metformin. And then they're also put on high blood pressure medication because with insulin resistance, you get those, the arterial plaque formation, which it causes your blood pressure to rise. So now you're put on 3 other medications in addition to that, the atorvastatin. Then a couple of months later, you come back in my office, and because the metformin causes a B12 deficiency, and they didn't tell you that to supplement, you now have neuropathy because B12 helps with neural pathways. And that's what causes neuropathy if you're deficient in it. So then they put you on gabapentin. And because of all this, you start getting, some acid reflux and you're having digestive issues. So then they put you on omeprazole or esomeprazole. Well, part of that side effect is it causes insulin resistance. So then, because of all this, you can't really concentrate, but then you go into a deep state of depression or you have anxiety. Then they put you on some Zoloft. And then all of a sudden, because of that statin they initially put you on, you start developing a cardiac arrhythmia. And that's because you are deficient now in CoQ10, which helps regulate your heartbeat. So they put you on a beta blocker. Now you're on metoprolol. And then because of all this, you then develop type 2 diabetes. You're no longer a pre-diabetic. You now have full-blown diabetes. And they say, well, your metformin's not working, so we're going to put you on Ozempic. And that's how you go from 1 medication to 10, exactly what Charlene described when she sees people in the pharmacy that are anywhere between 4 and 9 medications. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's just one pharma loop. And keep in mind, this is anywhere between, this can go from, even in 2 years' time or less. So I'd say the average was like 2 to 3 years when all this started happening. And it just kind of spiraled out of control in this merry-go-round. Not a friendly merry-go-round. So.
No, not at all. Not fun.
And so one of the things that I also saw and I was paying attention to was periodontal disease and insulin resistance. Is there a direct link? And the answer is yes. So back in 2017 in Frontiers, I believe, Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience magazine, or there was an article that talked about the same bacteria that causes periodontal disease is linked to those people who have periodontal disease that have Alzheimer's disease. It was seen in Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, and diabetes. So there was definitely a link. And let's talk a little bit about how that occurs. So with this slide, I like it because periodontal disease definitely is a contributing factor to insulin resistance. And I'll go into detail more about that. But what also happens is with this, it also can increase your risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and also Alzheimer's disease. So with this next slide, basically what happens here is digestion of carbohydrates begin in your mouth. The salivary amylase breaks down the carbohydrates into simple sugars. And so with their byproducts, then they form plaque and acids. And with these plaque and acids, they sit on your teeth and your gums and they cause inflammation if the plaque isn't brushed away in a timely manner. Well, the body sees this as an injury, so it sends in the white blood cells and the cytokines to fix the problem. But over time, you're eating more and more and consuming more and more carbohydrates, then leading to more and more plaque, causing more and more chronic inflammation. So with chronic inflammation, the pro-inflammatory cytokines, what happens is they disrupt the insulin signaling pathways. Similar to what Charlene was saying, that when those pathways get disrupted, then insulin cannot do its job. If insulin can't do its job, it cannot unlock the receptor site on the cell and help the glucose get in the cell to use for energy. So what happens is the insulin can't unlock the cell, the glucose builds up in our system, causing insulin resistance. So the takeaway here, and on the next slide, I'll show you. Go ahead and advance that, Ken. Periodontal disease and diabetes is bidirectional. It's a two-way street. But more importantly, it also contributes to heart disease and Alzheimer's. Because in diabetes, you are immunocompromised. That means you are more susceptible to bacterial infection. What causes periodontal disease? A bacteria. So if you have diabetes, you're more than likely going to get periodontal disease. If you haven't been diagnosed with periodontal disease, it's only a matter of time. I say not yet. Then again, if you don't have diabetes but you have periodontal disease with what I just described, that's going to lead to insulin resistance, causing you to develop diabetes or heart disease, because that bacteria and the toxins, when they enter your body with the systemic inflammation, what that causes is the thickening of your heart walls. It also increases the thickening of the lining of the blood vessels. So then you get heart disease or high blood pressure, hypertension. And then when those bacteria and toxins enter into the bloodstream, they can go and cause neuroinflammation, which accelerates the beta amyloid plaque formation, which accelerates cognitive decline.
Wow. That's a lot.
I know there was a lot to unpack there. There's a lot that goes on.
Yeah. But what about our teeth? Because that's what people always want to know about. You're a dentist.
They always want to know, do I have cavities? And that's the first question I get. So it works the same way. Digestion of carbohydrates begin in the mouth. Salivary amylase breaks it down into simple sugars. Then the bacteria feed on the simple sugars, which are the carbohydrates that we ingested. And then the bacteria produces acids and plaque. The acids break down on the teeth, and cavities then form on the teeth. Very similar. So it's all due to inflammation and also bacteria.
Right, right. So, we're talking about carbohydrates. So that kind of jumps over into my area just a little bit, little bit. So carbohydrates, what the heck is going on? Because that seems to be something we're talking about. I mean, really, we talk about diabetes. We talked about a little bit of weight gain, which are both by the CDCs have classified now as epidemics around the world, that both of those things are impacting us. So why is this something that's been happening that didn't happen before? Well, that's kind of what we need to talk about just a little bit, because in 1963, J.R. Reynolds, who owns Camel Cigarettes, came along and bought out Punchy and Hawaiian Punch. And that would be the first food company that the tobacco companies would begin to buy. Now, that's important to remember, because I said the first one, because ultimately what we're going to see is that wouldn't be the last one that they would buy. In fact, what we find is that, holy cow, the tobacco companies would invest in food companies. They would focus. 11 of these major companies own all of our food companies. Even if you look at PepsiCo, who owns that healthy Quaker guy up there? That would be Pepsi Cola. Holy cow. I know it's really small because there's a lot of food companies that we're dealing with. So what they were able to do is they took that great technology, they combined it with food, and said, their scientists said, how can we make these things more addictive so people couldn't stop eating them, right? When you pop, you just can't stop, or you're eating Lay's potato chips and you can't eat just one, right? That's what we're all dealing with, is this simple thing that keeps happening, that we keep eating. So what is it that they did? Well, ultimately what they did was they removed fiber, because fiber is what's going to rot ultimately with our food. And in order to keep it so that it stays longer on the shelves and we crave it more, we've removed fiber from our diet. So bread in nature comes packaged in fiber. Rice comes packaged in fiber. Apples come packaged in pectin, which is incredibly powerful fiber because it's able to control fructose. And so what do we give our kids more than anything to think we're going to give them nutrition? We give them apple juice. We give them orange juice. And really, we're just giving them sugar water. Even in nature, sugar comes packaged in fiber, but we give that, and that's what we're eating in our food and all of this prepackaged food. So if you're like most of us, I suspect you probably eat a 3-meal method of eating with 3 meals and 2 to 3 healthy snacks, or 6 meals. What about you two? Dr. G, Charlene, what were you common when you ate on a regular basis, what did you eat before you realized about metabolic health?
I had 3 meals a day with 3 healthy snacks. And I say that healthy.
Charlene, how about you?
I would say I ate whenever I wanted.
Right?
Well,
Exactly.
some days I did that too.
We're adults, right? We're adults. But here's
right.
the thing. See if this was kind of like your day. You woke up in the morning. You've been burning fat actually all night long. You went to sleep. You didn't eat for like 7, 8, maybe 9 hours. And you woke up in the morning. Your cortisol and your insulin, your glucose all went up to get you out of bed when the alarm went off. So you ran downstairs and you got a heart-healthy breakfast because you ate Cheerios or you got some oatmeal and you got your milkshake coffee. And your blood sugar increased because you increased in carbs. And so that orange line is showing you how that insulin is increasing. But about mid-morning, you had a crash and you went and got a low-fat granola bar because low-fat is healthy, right? And that got you over to lunchtime. And then you ran to Costco and you were going through running your errands and you grabbed the hot dog meal because, golly, who can beat $1.50? And you got a Diet Coke because that was healthy. And that would take care of that hot dog, which, of course, that's the bad thing. We're not going to talk about the bread and the bun. And then mid-afternoon, you get to have that slowing down. You start to get a little fatigued. So you grab a handful of, I don't know, some granola, or you go get another granola bar, or you go get some pretzels because that's not a fried chip. But then your spouse or your partner calls you and says, hey, we need to get food for the kids for dinner tonight. So you said, I tell you what, I'm going to go buy Chick-fil-A or maybe Cane's because, well, that's chicken and that's healthy, right? So we get home and we pat ourselves on the back because we ate a healthy meal all day long. And then we go, let's reward ourselves with a bowl of ice cream. Does that sound like you? I suspect it sounds like most of us, right? Well, here's the thing. We've got to address that because that's what's been leading to our metabolic problems. Because every time we eat those carbohydrates, that's that blood sugar spike. Proteins and fats, that's much less when it comes to it. But when we're having those simple carbohydrates, that's what's sending those insulin levels up through the roof. And we've got to address that. That's one of the things that we've got to do. So let's go back a little bit so you understand the role of insulin. All right, we looked at one slide. I just kind of want to bring this up and remind you once again. So insulin is an anabolic hormone. It is the master hormone that unlocks the cell so the cells can use the glucose. It opens those glucose channels so glucose can get into your cells for energy. All right, every time we eat simple carbohydrates, as Dr. G was talking about, all right, those get stuck in our teeth. They get into our gums. They get into our system, and they are converted to glucose. Now, she's got some fancy terms. I just call the saliva. All right, let's just keep it simple. We know what that is. All right, that's going to break down our foods. All of those carbohydrates get broken down into 2 different things, and we're going to talk about the other one. But simple carbohydrates get broken down into sugar. So let's look at this slide one more time. All right, let's look at it just really quick. A little bit more in depth, a little bit. So we sit there and can see in a normal person, the insulin unlocks everything. The sugar gets into the system. The glucose and the insulin enter the blood through the cells, and then they are taken and transported to the brain, to the liver, to the muscles for the energy the way that's supposed to be. All right? It's supposed to work that way. But when we're insulin resistant and we've been eating those carbohydrates all day, that is increasing the number of glucose molecules in our body. Insulin can no longer unlock the cells because the cells say, forget it, we're full. Push, I don't want any more of that. So now the glucose and the insulin enter into the bloodstream, not in our cells, but basically free form. And now your brain, your liver, your cells cannot access the energy that we're supposed to be able to do when we're eating. And our bodies become resistant to the insulin, just like we do when we have too much antibacterial, all right, when we get antibiotics, right, Charlene? You've seen that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's huge. When we have too much antibiotics, we become resistant to antibiotics. The bacteria does. The same thing happens to our body. So we can change that. We can actually change what's going on in our bodies when we understand what's happening, because this root cause of insulin resistance is the big thing that we're not talking about, and we should be. That's our pathophysiology. So what's happening? Let's review that again. We wake up in the morning, we get started, we feel hungry, maybe we feel tired, we eat a high carb diet. The insulin is released from our pancreas when we get those carbohydrates. All right. The cells then over time start to resist the too much insulin in our bodies, and the sugar then ultimately gets stored in our fat cells and is dumped into our bloodstreams. So what is it we can do to reverse it? And this is going to be game changer. So if you're sick of being sick, you want to pay attention to everything that we've talked about. So this is huge. All right. Looking at the studies, we see UCLA did their article that was summarizing the studies that have been going on, that when we eat in a certain order, it helps to control our blood glucose. Well, what order is that? If you look over on the screen, you'll see eating vegetables and protein first. Those are eating the carbs last through something called meal sequencing or meal order. Well, that coincides to the CDC that says fiber is the carb that helps you maintain or manage your diabetes. Now, think about this. Diabetes is simply insulin resistance on steroids. That's just what happens when the glucose and the insulin is simply out of control and there's too much in our bodies. So what our grandparents told us when we were younger, eat your veggies first, is still what we should be listening to. Now, just so y'all know, my grandmother's never sounded like that. There's a terrible impression of my grandmother's. But what we're supposed to be doing is that very thing. We start by eating those vegetables first, because unlike carbohydrates that become sugar, the saliva converts those fibrous vegetables, those fibrous carbs, into a gel that coats our esophagus, that coats our gut, that slows digestion and helps control those blood sugar spikes. So that is a huge part of what we need to do. And I'm sorry for jumping back in and out right there. I'm still learning some of the system. So remember this slide we had at the beginning. 93% of us are not metabolically healthy. Now, folks, this is key. I need you to pay attention right here. 93% of us are not metabolically healthy. 95% of us don't get enough fiber. Folks, we ain't getting enough fiber. That's my Southern coming out right there. We ain't getting enough fiber. You ain't not eating enough greens, folks. That's our problem right there. These are connected. If you're not seeing this connection after this, you're not paying attention. If 93% of us are not metabolically healthy and 95% of us are not getting enough fiber, I think we're finding a solution, folks. This is key. Now, how much fiber should you be getting? Women under 50 years of age should be getting 25 grams. Women over 51, that's 21. Men, are you ready for this? 38 grams. I know you're not eating enough fiber. Men over 51, 30 grams. You are not getting enough fiber. We're talking about 8 cups of broccoli, folks. Who's eating 8 cups of broccoli? Is that you? Is that you? I doubt it, because it ain't me, and I don't know anybody that's eating that much.
It's not me.
Even my clients that are vegetarians, that's hard. That's a lot of fiber, folks. But there is a solution, and we're getting to that. But ultimately, if you would just start when you eat your meals, start with eating those non-starchy, fibrous vegetables first, then go to proteins and fats, those healthy fats, and we leave carbs last. That's what we're talking about. That's as easy as it is. But sometimes it's hard to know exactly what's going on. So what's happening in your body? And this is huge. You need to pay attention. This is a game-changing slide right here. Follow along with me. If we look up at the top left, food ingestion. You don't want to see our faces. Let's go up. Let's get it right here. So you start to eat that food. You eat in the meal order: fiber, proteins, healthy fats, and carbs. You're going to eat until you're satiated, till you're full. But here's what's going to happen. How do you know you're full? Well, when you eat correctly, the food gets into your GI tract, into your small intestines, and in your small intestines, follow the arrows, folks, your body will secrete GLP-1. Charlene, you mentioned GLP-1 earlier, right?
I sure did.
You did. Now, was that our body's natural GLP-1 that you mentioned earlier?
Not in the pen.
No, right.
That's a copycat.
Right. So what we've learned is our body, folks, your body will make GLP-1. When you eat correctly, your body's going to make glucagon-like peptide. That is a catabolic hormone, different from anabolic, which is a growth hormone. GLP-1 is a hormone that is a regulatory hormone that says stop eating. So that incretin action signals to the brain, hey, you're full. So we need to be increasing our body's GLP-1, not taking medications. And when we eat correctly, that's exactly what's happening. But if we also add into that something called intermittent fasting, or I know that can be intimidating. All right, folks, I'm a pastor. We're not talking 40 days and 40 nights of going into the desert here. We're talking about simply going from eating 3 meals a day and snacks or 6 meals a day to eating 2 meals a day. If you would just do that, as you can see right here in the research that's been done, you are going to increase your body's insulin sensitivity. Remember, you're going to eat until you're full. And if you'll listen to what we're talking about right here and what we're about to kind of unpack for you even more, the tools that will make this so much easier, you can reset your insulin sensitivity, getting your metabolic health under control, because intermittent fasting is going to increase your body's insulin sensitivity. All right, right out of the gate. So there's many different ways of fasting, but if you look at number one over there, 16 and 8, we're talking about 2 meals a day. All right, you're not going crazy here. That's what we're talking about, 2 meals a day. All right, it's that easy. All right, and here's what it's going to do. It's going to move you from being metabolically inflexible to being metabolically flexible. You move from being a sugar burner to a fat burner. All right, which is what we want to do. And when we do coaching, we go more in depth on that when we talk about it. But here's the thing. You're going to decrease that inflammation in your body, which is what that insulin level is all the time. You're going to decrease your blood glucose levels. You're going to decrease your blood pressure. You're going to increase your human growth hormone. So you're going to be regenerating your body cells and stem cells all along. And then you're going to be increasing that insulin sensitivity and giving your pancreas a break so it's not having to make insulin all day. It can do some other good things that you need, right? So that's what we want to think about. But Dr. G, there's got to be some tools that we can use to help with this.
Well, I sure hope so. Because when you mentioned fasting, I know when I first heard that, it was very intimidating to me. And the amount of fiber that as a woman that I should be having, I mean, I like broccoli, but I don't like it that much. I mean,
I have to eat more than you do. I have 38 grams to eat.
Exactly.
Nice.
So becoming, bridging the gap, how do we go from being metabolically inflexible to metabolic flexibility? And it's just what Ken said. When you are metabolically flexible, you are able to switch between the two fuel sources as a fat burner or as a sugar burner, or as a sugar burner to a fat burner. And your body knows what to do. But how do we get there? And with intermittent fasting and meal sequencing or food sequencing, you can do it that way. And it's perfectly fine, but I find I need a little help. And so if you're, a lot like me, which you might be,
and me,
yeah, and we kind of touched on that, where I need help because I like food. I'm from the New Orleans area, and I love to eat. We eat. We don't eat to live. We live to eat. So how do we go about doing that? So the tools the solution is, I'll let you guys read that off, and then we can go to the next.
There's a solution out there that has 5 patents on it, and it has the clinical studies that we'll look at in just a second.
They are safe and natural, plant sourced, natural, and guaranteed.
And over time, they become cost neutral. And that over time is rather quickly, they become cost neutral, and they are available in 50 plus countries. The first one we're going to talk about is Unimate. So our Unimate is from the yerba mate plant of Argentina, and it has undergone a 5-step purification process. It is hand-picked and fire-roasted, extracted, concentrated, and purified. So you're getting the purest form of yerba mate that is out there without pesticides or herbicides. In our Unimate, it has polyphenols of ferulic acid and chlorogenic acid, as well as theobromine, mate saponins, and some antioxidants. The thing about our chlorogenic acid, now you see, chlorogenic acid itself can be found in coffee and green tea and some fruits and vegetables.
Right.
But our chlorogenic acid is 375 times the amount of any chlorogenic acid in any, yerba mate products out there. What that translates is that it's 10 times the amount of the chlorogenic acid that's found in a premium cup of coffee. So with that, it helps to stimulate our own GLP-1. What Charlene was talking about with those pens, we don't need that anymore. What Ken was talking about with food sequencing and intermittent fasting, this is a tool that helps you your body facilitate that. So it stimulates your body's own GLP-1 by 70% without any of those side effects, without any of them. So this allows you to burn your own fat for fuel. It curbs the food noise, so no more food cravings. It improves your blood pressure because it causes vasodilation. Okay. And then it helps to improve your insulin sensitivity. It's also a bronchodilator. So with theobromine, now theobromine in the Unimate is also found in dark chocolate. So it's that feel good sensation that you get when you eat that. So that's what it's helping with in Unimate. It improves your mood. It gives you more mental clarity and it helps you focus. But one of the things not many people know about is that with theobromine, it acts as remineralize the enamel of teeth. And so that is a similar effect that fluoride can do, but the theobromine does it without side effects. So the mate saponins help with fat metabolism, and the ferulic acid helps with inflammation. And I think
so there's also, yeah, I think I knew it. So there's more to that. So there's also balance, and that's the other part of this. Charlene, you want to jump in on that one?
Sure. Balance is a fiber product, and it is a complex blend of different kinds of fiber from plants that you, when taken before a meal, will help to decrease, prevent that glucose spike. It won't be so steep. And so it also helps with some of the cholesterol control, maintaining good cholesterol levels, decreasing triglycerides, and adds to that 38 to 20 grams that we need being a male or female.
Right.
Also has a multivitamin, but I think we're going to talk about that, Ken.
You know, one of the things that I'm just going to throw this in there. One of the things that I get asked a lot is, how is this different than Metamucil? And
oh yeah. So
do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, Charlene picked up on, and she kind of hit that this is a matrix. So it's not just one source, where Metamucil is just like one source. And there's actually really no, it's not something that's even prescribed. You can get it. It's really more of a true food supplement, where we're talking about nutraceuticals that have third-party validation and the studies behind it. And the thing about the balance is this has been around for over 30 years. People will say, well, metformin and some of these medications have been used for 30 years. Well, so has balance, and it's had the same research and the third-party validations that have been done on it, and it's been used around the world for the past 30 years. I've met some of the people that have been using it for this time, and that matrix is exactly why you don't necessarily have to have that that large amount of fiber during the day, because of the blend, because it's a concentrated fiber of 5 different fibers, soluble fibers, and 2 different insoluble fibers. You're getting an incredible blend that you wouldn't get in just simply something like Metamucil, which is simply a one source fiber that doesn't have the research and backing to go along with it. So this has got so much more research to come behind it, in the fact, as Charlene says, and we're going to look at the studies right here in just a moment. And Dr. G, I know you wanted to talk a little bit too about how it gets used. So when we think about what we talked about with meal order and doing intermittent fasting, kind of throw that in here a little bit when we look back at the solution that we're talking about here.
Sure. And I like to, start out with when you wake up in the morning, just like Ken talked about with that eating sequencing and so forth, where you're already in a fasted state. When you wake up, to extend that fast, basically, you're not going to skip your breakfast. You're going to delay your breakfast until noon. And then you're going to sip on this Unimate all morning. It can be hot or it can be cold. And what that's doing is it's helping you stimulate your own body's GLP-1. So you're literally you're eating your love handles for breakfast. That's another way of looking at it. And then when comes time for lunch, you're going to practice meal sequencing. You're going to go ahead and eat your lunch. And then in the afternoon, you're going to have another Unimate. Now, important to note, you're not going to snack at all. There's no snacking. Can't snack. And you're not going to want to, actually, because what that Unimate is doing, it's curbing the food cravings. Remember, it's helping to ward them off. It's stimulating your body's own GLP-1. And while if you're eating to satiety, then you're not going to want to have a snack in the afternoon. So you drink your Unimate until it's time for dinner in the evening. Again, you're going to practice food sequencing. You're going to take your balance right before you have dinner. You're going to mix it and you're going to drink it very quickly, because it does get thicker, and that's because you want it to get thicker in your belly. You don't want it to thicken on the outside. You want to drink it as fast as you can. Practice your meal sequencing, eat your dinner like normal, and then no snacking after dinner. No, and if you're going to have dessert, you can have dessert. Just have it after dinner. Don't wait 2 or 3 hours before, it's like 10 or 11 o'clock and you have ice cream. So, and it's that simple. It's really that simple.
Right. Well, now, and Charlene, this is important, I think, too, for people need to understand. When we talk about the solutions, we're talking about something that really is backed up by science. The PDR.net is something that's important. I know it's not primarily in yours, but this is what you're counting on the doctors to be looking at, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about why the PDR is important?
Oh, PDR is, you can kind of equate it to like the Bible for drug information for providers. It tells them the name of the drug, the different doses it comes in, how to prescribe it, how many times a day you would prescribe it, what the max doses are. So it gives you all the pertinent information that you need to actually prescribe a prescription that can be filled at the pharmacy.
Right. And this also talks about the studies. Now, I mentioned that before, and you saw some of the universities that have studied the Unimate and the balance, but there's more to it than that, because when we look at it, the PDR reflects this research. So like in metabolism, like I said, this has been around for over 30 years now. And so this is from a study in 2002 that was done by researchers and scientists and doctors at the Cleveland Clinic and published in Metabolism. It's in the PubMed. And they came to the conclusion in their studies that the product Balance specifically, if taken regularly, could reduce cardiovascular risk on a population basis and potentially decrease the need and or dose for lipid-lowering drugs. So that's statin medication. So think about, I want y'all to think, I'm going to go back to this again. This is kind of crazy. Does fiber work like statin, or does statins work like fiber? I mean, that's an important distinction, folks. What's been around more? Do you have a statin deficiency or do you have a fiber deficiency? Come on now, follow me, because there's more to it. Here's a similar study. This was done at the University of Sydney, the home of the glycemic index. And when we look at the study, they did their research, and what they found was the Balance, the fiber matrix, has the same mechanism of action as metformin in lowering those postprandial glucose spikes. You see that big blue line, that's what you get with glucose. That red line, that's what you get when you are taking, when you just eat a plain piece of white bread. But when you take the Balance before you eat, all right, it has a similar mechanism of action as metformin. That's that green and the blue line of lowering the postprandial spike. It's very similar. So again, let you think about this. Do you have a fiber deficiency or do you have a metformin deficiency? I don't remember anything in my history books about metformin being around when Jesus walked the earth. I don't remember that. And I do have a degree in biblical studies. So I think I would know that. Nothing in the Greek ever translated, or the Hebrew, to metformin. So that was not a problem. But we know that fiber was an important part of our diet. So we're talking about studies and research that on this fiber, it is working, or is medication working like fiber? Again, let's think about it. But that's not all. So this is the research that has been done on chlorogenic acid and specifically Unimate, and how it has been studied and researched, not just in humans, but also in mice, about it, how it's helped with our health. And chlorogenic acid and its benefits alters the gut microbiome. All right. It helps to increase the beneficial short-chain fatty acids. It changes, and the link, it improves our metabolic health and reduces our risk of metabolic disorders. Everything that we have been talking about tonight has been studied and researched over and over again, that the Unimate and the balance go hand in hand on this journey to health. So we really have an opportunity. We can make lifestyle changes, or we can continue to take a pill for every ill. And that's something that we see over and over again in our world, in our society. But I love this quote right here that I think is so important. There is no human condition made better by poor nutrition, and no human condition made worse by better nutrition. Let that sink in, if just for a few minutes. Folks, our health matters. And thank y'all so much for being here and taking time. Those of y'all that have listened to our presentation, our time here on our science call. And I just want to give a little bit of time and just let y'all know, if this is something that you are interested in learning more about, if you know me, Dr. G, or Charlene, get with one of us. Now, we're going to be doing this in the weeks ahead. We may change the format here a little bit, but this is really what we have been trying to help people understand and what we do our coaching on. So were there any things that maybe if you had a question about, send us a message, let us know. But I just want to give a moment to Charlene, Dr. G. Was there something else that you would have loved to have said tonight that you want to get recorded for posterity's sake and for this recording for the future? Was there something that was on there, or something about your own story that this has been a huge part for you?
Well, first, if you're hesitant, don't be hesitant. There's a 90-day money back guarantee, first of all. So in 90 days, they're going to ask you to, your doctor's going to ask you to check your hemoglobin A1C anyway. So what have you got to lose? And if your metformin isn't working, and then they have to put you on Ozempic, like Charlene talked about, you don't get that money back. So I think it's worth it. It's worth a try.
We don't do any refunds at the pharmacy, that's for sure.
Not even for unopened meds, right, Charlene? It doesn't matter. Once you take them, it's done.
It's yours forever.
It's yours. Yeah,
right.
Whether it works or not.
Right. Absolutely. Well, ladies, thank y'all so much for being on here tonight. I know we've got things that as we keep moving forward with this and helping people, I'm excited to be on this journey with y'all and helping folks. So thank y'all so much for being here. As I say all the time, go get the day, make it golden. We'll see y'all around on the flip side. And if you know other folks that need help, don't hesitate to share this with y'all. Thank y'all so much. Y'all have a good night.
Thanks, Ken.